Alright, so you remember the CFTC, the regulators of the commodities, etc., silver and gold, especially in this video is what I'm going to highlight. And we knew there needed to be position limits, things like that, put on, again, specifically gold and silver and some other commodities. And they said, oh, well, we don't need that, we don't need that. Then, of course, the whistleblower came out, caught J.P. Morgan red-handed manipulating the silver market. Then an investigation took place. And, of course, they're still investigating 3 years later. There's only 2 incidences that the whistleblower who called the CFTC to tell them about these that got this whole thing started. So why haven't we heard any news on just those 2 incidences? And because he specifically mentioned J.P. Morgan, we understand you're still investigating. But what did you find? Anything? We can't talk about open investigations. All right, no problem. So finally, they passed the law or the rule for position limits, and there's 2 types of position limits. The first one, the spot month. You can only hold so many positions or contracts, whether you're a person, a company, etc. You're only allowed to hold so many contracts, which would, of course, remove the manipulation out of J.P. Morgan's hands because they own a massive amount of positions in short positions in silver. So the spot month, that's the first rule that's going to come into play 60 days after they define the word swaps. And they said originally we ought to have that definition done by, the first day of November. November 1st, we think we'll be able to get it done. For God's sakes, it's a definition of one word, swaps. And it's a financial word. So, in the financial industry, what does a swap mean? Well, now we don't want to look there. We need to define our own meaning of the word swaps before we can go forward with this rule limit, position limit. Excuse me, not rule limit, position limit. And we need 60 days once we come up with that. Well, everyone's like, oh, well, that's fine. I mean, for God's sake, it's one word, swaps. I mean, okay, great. November 1st, we'll have it. First comes, we haven't come to an agreement yet. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, November, what the hell's going on? Past a week, nothing. And then old MF Global goes down. Okay, now the CFTC is investigating that. Why didn't the CME group notify us when they first saw something wrong? They waited an entire 24 hours later. We're going to have to investigate this. It is their job, of course. But guess what happened when they decided to investigate that? Hey guys, knock knock. We understand you're busy investigating that all of a sudden, came out of nowhere. But did you ever come up with the definition of the word swaps so we can get this whole position limit rule going? At least the spot month rule, the first one that takes effect 60 days after you determine the definition. Due to this recent crashing of MF Global, an investigation we're now conducting, we have officially put on hold the meetings that were supposed to be taking place to define that word. So we're going to have to put that on hold now, and we don't know when we're going to get back on that as of yet. And if Congress asks them, again, Bernie Sanders or anyone who pretends I'm for the people, what's going on? I want to talk to the CFC right now. Open hearing on TV. What's right? Those guys. Sorry, sir. We had a major meltdown with MF Global. You think the Congress is going to get mad at them all of a sudden for not defining the word swaps? Hey, they had a crisis. It came out of nowhere. Unexpectedly. Love that word. Unexpected collapse of MF Global lands on CFTC's lap. Can't define the word swap. Therefore, you can't have your position limits in the silver and gold and whatever else commodity game 60 days after that anyways. So old Jay Snip, sitting on the sidelines with his silver cash that he sold some of his silver with, telling people, I'm still going to sit on the sidelines because look at what's happening in the economy, Europe, bonds, etc. We also have next week, in about 3 days from now, roughly, 4 days, whatever, 3 days, 4 days, Wednesday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we got to come up with this agreement. Congress, Committee of 12, Super Committee, what'd you guys find? What are you guys going to cut? And I read something interesting today. They're trying to find, 1.3 or 1.7, whatever the number is. 1 point something trillion in cuts. Well, that sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Hell yeah. Trillions? Hell yeah, it's a lot. For how many years? Oh, 10 years. 1 point something trillion in a 10-year span of time. You know what? You want a house? Good. We're going to give you a loan for 100 years. Huh? Yeah. 100-year loan. You'll be dead by the time the loan expires. But we'll give you a 100-year loan. How's that sound? It's pretty ridiculous, isn't it? Matter of fact, even a 30-year loan is pretty ridiculous when you really think about it, but that's beside the point. Bottom line is that the silver and gold markets still need to be manipulated by these elitists, so they will do anything and use any event as an excuse to postpone those damn position limits. And again, that's only for the spot month, which means the month you're in, right? If I had a paper contract open right now, November, it expires at the end of November. I've got to either be out of that contract or demand delivery. And if I demand delivery, I have to come up with all the money to demand delivery, not on because it's on margin. So I got to come up with 10 times roughly or 9 more times the amount I have in the contract to play the game. So naturally, the paper pushers, they're going to sell the contract at the end of the month. Now, if you're JP Morgan and you have a massive short position, you could, of course, cause the market to go up or down at any time because you own massive amounts of positions. Of course, their position happens to be short, but either way, they can move the market whatever way they want when they own massive amounts of positions. That would stop if these position limit rules were in play. But again, that's just the spot month. The month we're in, November, let's say. But you could go get a futures contract for many, 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 many months out, up 2 years plus. Months and months and months out. Not just today, the spot month, or this month, the spot month. That rule doesn't kick in until 2013, roughly. But that also assumed that the first rule limit, position limit, would be in effect by January. They said they need, quote, we need a year roughly to analyze some certain market data now, which will basically be September of 2012, and then we'll implement the second part of the rule, which is all of the months, not just the spot month, but all of the months, the entire futures contracts months. By that time, it would be safe to say there's no way in hell they can manipulate the market unless the old friend CME Group, JP Morgan's twin sister, whatever you want to call it, would do what they have been doing this year so far. Margin increase, margin hike. What about gold? What about these other commodities? What about these treasury notes? All these other things you guys sell as paper on freaking the exchanges. We're not worried about those. We're just, for some reason, man, we're just really concerned with silver. Yet, when you look at some of the other commodities, the volume is far greater than what silver is. Therefore, the volatility is greater than what silver is. Why do they keep hammering silver with these great increases in margin? So that they can suppress the price. Again, as we all know, it can only last so long. So I want to read you something from Zero Hedge, which ties into what I just said, basically. And he says, is this the final straw? Jefferies and 6 other banks sued for fraudulent MF Global bond issuance. Pick the odd one out of the following 7 banks, while in the process pointing out what they have in common. Bank of America, Citigroup, Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs, Jefferies, JP Morgan and Chase, Royal Bank of Scotland, etc. There they are. As it so happens, 6 of the 7 of those I just listed are bank holding companies and have access to the Fed's various emergency lending, free money, facilities. The 7th bank, bank holding company, Jefferies, which a few years ago boasted that it is now the largest remaining true investment bank after all its competitors had converted to bank holding company status, may soon regret it, said that and did not join its peers. Yeah, well, I guess he mistyped there. They may regret saying that, is what he's saying. Now, Why is this? For the same reason why on November 1st, the day after MF Global... Oh, is it really? Was it really at November 1st? The day after MF Global filed for bankruptcy. So in the beginning of my video, when I said it was a week after that, I guess I was incorrect on that one. But if that's the case, that's just even more ammunition for what I was saying. November 1st, the day after MF Global filed for bankruptcy. November 1st was also the day the CFTC, again, said we ought to have the definition of swaps already ready to go on November 1st. And right as we're going to hammer this out, let's get together, guys. MF Global bankruptcy, put that on the back burner. We'll look at that in another couple of weeks. Then they said that. So then when asked what's going on now, we're just too tied up right now in the MF Global thing. We can't define the word swaps. You know how ridiculous that is? I mean, think about this. The definition of a word that's pretty much already defined in the financial industry, trading, etc. It's pretty much already defined. But you're going to redefine the word sometime later. Now, how much do you want to bet when they finally come around and they finally define the word swaps, you'll already understand, well, that's what we all thought it meant anyways. That's what it's supposed to have been from day one. What do you mean you had to define the word? It already is what everyone said it was. So what was the definition part of this? Oh, well, we just have to be real clear, whatever. So he says, why is Jeffries, the spokesperson who made that comment, soon going to regret saying that they were, the largest remaining true investment bank? For the same reason why on November 1st, the day after MF Global filed for bankruptcy, Zero Hedge tweeted, "Here is why Jeffries is in deep doo-doo." And he links it, of course. Naturally, as I said, Zero Hedge, the conspiracy of the financial world, phenomenal information, always. The reference, of course, is to the now legendary prospectus for MF Global 6.25% notes of 2016. Those are the bond stuff he's talking about. That had the infamous Corzine Keyman event. Interest rate applicable to the notes will be subject to an increase of 1% upon the departure of Mr. Corzine as our full-time Chief Executive Officer due to his appointment to a federal position by the President of the United States and confirmed of that appointment by the United States Senate prior to July 1st, 2013. End quote. At this point, the only appointment Obama may give Corzine is that of a presidential pardon for a criminal felony offense, assuming, of course, Corzine brings a sleeping bag to Zuccotti Square, the only offense for which he may ever get arrested. Alas, Jeffries and the 6 other banks do not have that luxury. As of late this afternoon, and this was written today, this morning, or actually 1:47 p.m. actually, Jeffries and the other 6 banks do not have that luxury. As of late this afternoon, all 6 were sued by pension funds who said the bonds offering prospectuses concealed problems that led to the futures brokerage's collapse. Everything these banks and financial institutions on the face of the earth, especially in America, because we're the richest country, therefore that's where all the heathens will be found, they all commit fraud, they all have cookbooking, all their books are cooked, etc. It's the way they make it to the top. They cannot, it is impossible to make it to the top without doing fraudulent activities. End of discussion. There's no such thing as being fair and just living a good life, having a good salary in a company, and just naturally making it to the top. The statistical impossibilities of that are so, it's just so rare to find an actual company. A perfect example would be like Microsoft, Google, in the beginning. Those were brought out of nowhere, legitimately made it to the top, didn't have to lie, steal, and cheat. Now, of course, Microsoft has been caught in some things over the last few years, where judges in other countries had to rule on, I don't know if it's like copyright infringement or monopoly type stuff, you know. But what my point is, when they first started out, these things grew naturally. Rare as hell to happen, but clearly there's two perfect examples: Google and Microsoft. You could say the same thing about Facebook. But how many millions of companies are out there? Billions, potentially, in the world. Some kind of company in that statistics. And I just named 3. You know what I mean? That's incredible. Yet, if you're a financial institution, one of the club, of course, again, one of these 7 banks, the big banks, the too big to fails, and their friends, of course, well, then they've all, this whole entire time, they made it to the top. These are phenomenal, you know, prestigious, phenomenal organizations, of course. Yet, one after another, fraud, 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 fraud. Book cooking, book cooking, book cooking, book cooking, book cooking, book cooking. Wow. Incredible. Again, if you or I did that, you'd be in jail. We would be in jail, in prison. We would be taken to the cleaners. These guys, basically, is John Corzine, has he had handcuffs put on him as fast as they put handcuffs on old Bernie Madoff? John Corzine, what? This is not even questionable. There's not even a chance. There's not a chance in hell that, well, it was a mistake, accounting error. That's all that was. We can't possibly prosecute the guy. It was an accounting error. No, it was called fraud, and it is still called fraud. Now, the other interesting thing, let me just go ahead and continue reading this. They are suing them by pension funds who said the bonds offering prospectuses were concealed problems that led to the futures brokerage's collapse, precisely as Zero Hedge expected. And unfortunately for Jefferies, this may well be the final nail in the coffin, because while the market had punished the bank for its exposure, the biggest unknown in the past 2 weeks was whether and when it would be sued precisely for its MF Global liability. And that time is right now. Next up, every single entity that was impaired in part or in whole as a result of the MF Global bankruptcy will follow suit and sue the same 7 banks, of which only Jefferies does not have the benefit of an infinite backstop. And it goes on to talk about these pension funds here. The lawsuit was brought by the IBEW Local 90 Pension Fund in Connecticut and the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Local 562 Pension Fund in Missouri, and seeks class action status. It seeks damages for investors between February 3rd, 2011 and October 31st, 2011 in MF Global Securities, including its 1.875% convertible senior notes maturing in 2016. That's the ones I was talking about earlier. Its 3.375% convertible senior notes maturing in 2018, and its 6.25% senior notes maturing in 2016. And to everybody or anyone who may have lost money or had their capital locked up indefinitely by the bankrupt firm, which we are 100% certain will see all of its valuable assets picked off by Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, we suggest you familiarize yourself with that lawsuit and join it yourself, because one person who is getting very familiar with its contents right about now is Jefferies CEO Dick Handler. Incidentally, if Jefferies is in big trouble, our other tweet from November 1st is also true, which was, quote, "And if Jefferies is in trouble, so is Fried Frank, underwriter counsel on the MF Global bond. So investment banks first, law firms next. Just how high will this debacle for the current administration reach, we wonder." The pension, as Lindsey Williams said 100,000 times now, as his elitist friend told him before he died, the other one, if it's written on a piece of paper, if it is written on a piece of paper, it is not worth the paper it's written on. And that piece of paper costs a fraction of a penny to make. If it's written on a piece of paper, It is not worth the paper it's written on. Gerald Celente played their game, played it and won, had money in his own account with them, was making so much money this whole year, I guess, on his futures contract that he had, made enough profit to buy out the entire next December contract, basically, in full to demand full delivery of the gold. And he got a margin call, and the money wasn't there because of the MF Global collapse. Gerald Celente, I do love you. Gerald Celente, I love the information you provide. Gerald Celente, I've been watching you for years, and I'm not mad that this happened to you. I'm not yelling at you for this happening to you. I understand what you were doing, and I actually applaud you because you were playing their game and then taking the one thing that they did not want people taking, that they pretended to hold on to, which is real physical gold and silver in these COMEX vaults, which we know is a fraction of what they even say that they have on paper. And you are taking that little fraction that they had and demanding delivery on it, which I appreciate. But you still played the paper game, and as Lindsey Williams said, if it's written on a piece of paper, it is not worth the paper it is written on. And he lost probably somewhere around $200,000 to get out of that gold, to have that enough money for that gold contract, is what I'm estimating. Somewhere in that neighborhood, 150, 200, 2 something maybe, whatever. Because I don't know what contracts he had at the time, where he was in at or whatever. But that's roughly, we'll just call it $200,000 that he lost. Now, granted, he may end up getting it back. There may have to be all these lawsuits flying. It may be tied up. But do you really want to be tied up in a lawsuit for like 2 years, 3 years, going back and forth, and then finally at the end of the day, well, we'll settle. We'll give in and settle, and then Gerald Celente's got to take a haircut if he wishes to settle. He doesn't have to, and I don't think he probably would either. I think he would want to stick it to him for everything. But again, the CME Group, we handle all these transactions through the commodities market. We are the guarantor of all of these transactions. Listen, CME Group, if you are what you just said you are, and there's video of the bozo, I don't know his name, from the CME Group saying it. Matter of fact, if you go to Gerald Celente right now, his YouTube channel, he has the video up. It's his latest one. And in his video, he plays the clip of where the guy says that. Where's Gerald Celente's money? Where's the 150,000 other investors' money if the CME Group boasts of having $100 billion of insurance funding on standby at any given moment, and we've never had a member or a client lose a penny? Listen, CME Group. Yeah, listen, let me get it. Can I talk to the head real quick? Yeah, I know he's busy, but this is very important. You were quoted as saying no one lost even a penny. No investor, no client, anything, right? Yeah. Listen, you familiar with Gerald Celente? I think he just lost a few pennies. Like, I don't know, $150,000 to maybe $200,000 worth of money. A lot of pennies. Hello? Hello, you there? Exactly. Why? Because he knows, too, it was written on a piece of paper, and it's not worth the paper it was written on. So this MF Global thing, which, again, dealt with derivatives and stuff, and now there's these, as I always read on Zero Hedge, it's not about the credit default swap or the bonds or whatever the financial instrument is. It's always about, and this is usually for derivatives, but it is always about the counterparty risk. And we are witnessing right now, with the MF Global collapse, the counterparty risk. That's what's taking. We're not witnessing the risk. The counterparty risk is now being exposed and coming out of the woodwork. All the counterparties that were tied into that, who none of us really know, but that's the nature of the beast, we're fixing to see. So do I really think we can get to like late 2012 before the markets crash or something like that? Man, with this kind of thing happening, man, I just have to say there's no way. Of course, it could happen. We're not in charge. I'm not in charge. You never know what they're doing behind the scenes. They could simply just, okay, everyone's got their money back. MF Global collapse. We'll take some kind of money that no one can count yet from the Federal Reserve through an audit that'll take years to uncover. We'll just clean this up and stretch this on for another year. You never know. But seeing one thing after another thing taking place, man, I don't see this. I don't see that happening. And they still need to manipulate the markets, clearly, because of what the CFTC is doing. We can't define the word swaps, and that's going to wait another 60 days until we can find that. You know, once we come up with the word swap, then it's 60 days for the spot month, position limit rules, all that. There is no freaking way that this is all a coincidence. All these dates. Again, Hugo Chavez, 15th of November. In 15 days, we will have our gold. We've signed everything with the other party in Europe, whatever, or London. In 15 days, we will have our gold. And coincidentally, perfect timing, right? Early November. MF Global happens. Tons of people who are fixing the demand delivery for precious metals, playing the paper game just like Joe Salente, for the December month. You're stopped out. We got to investigate all this stuff. You may get your money back. You might not. We got to see who's at fault. No matter what, you can't do anything with your contracts. They've been all stomped out. All of them. Now we have a lot of people who are going to demand delivery on gold and silver, not able to demand gold and silver. Do you think by chance that this is a possibility, that gold that would have been in investors like Joe Salente's hands come to December are now going to old Chavez to put out that fire? And they'll deal with these investors in the next several months, because this investigation, of course, you know, it's not going to be done in another week or two now, is it? It's going to drag on. Look how long the investigation, same group, CFTC, investigating market manipulation in silver since 2009. And, well, technically 2009. The first instance of fraudulent activity or market manipulation from JP Morgan was actually in 2008 for sure. Early 2008. But they claim we've been investigating for 3 years now. 3 years worth of investigation. And we're still looking. So are you going to hold your breath and think that they're going to find really quickly MF Global, you know, what they come up with on that, like, rapidly? No. Unless it's part of their agenda to do something. Then maybe they'll come out right away. And the markets crash and everything else happens. You never know. Anyways, I've had enough talking right now. And I got to run. So take care.